Hello, welcome back to my channel where we discuss the MCC Laws of Cricket. Uh, Today we are discussing Law 11. We'll probably complete it in one session. Let us see how it goes. Now, to begin with this law, we all know that this game is a longer duration game and is interrupted by intervals in between. And these are the rules which have been set by the laws for these intervals. Firstly, the law lists all the agreed intervals. Recognize the term agreed intervals. This we already spoke about it in Law 2 when the two captains, the umpires meet the two captains. They will decide on the duration and the time for taking of these intervals, and most of the time it is a given. But then in some games it is decided before the toss. You have to recognize that intervals between innings is an interval, agreed interval. Interval for meals, which may be lunch and nowadays even dinner. Interval for drinks, the drinks interval is an interval, an agreed interval. The period between close of play on one day and the start of play on the next day is also recognized as an agreed interval in the laws of the game. And any other agreed interval. Now the law allows the two sides to decide on some other agreed interval. Like for instance, it can very well happen that in Islamic countries during Ramzan, there could be an additional break for prayers, or maybe a dignitary like the Queen comes to visit Lords, and they may agree to have an interval of say 15 minutes in order to accommodate that visit. There will be an agreed interval. So the law allows you to agree to any number of intervals. Anything that is agreed to in advance is an agreed interval. Important thing for you to know it is 11.1.2. Only these intervals shall be considered as scheduled breaks for the purpose of Law 24.2.6. Please note that it is for the sole purpose of Law 24.2.6 that these will be considered as scheduled breaks. Anything else will be considered as an unscheduled break. This law deals 24.2.6 deals with penalty times, where stoppage time to count as penalty time served. If there is any other break, unscheduled break, that stoppage time under some circumstances can be treated as penalty time served, and the player penalized will gain from it. But this won't apply to any of the agreed intervals. We will come to that when we come to discuss Law 24. We will see it in detail, and this will be clearer. Here I want you to note that we have got agreed intervals. None of these agreed intervals will be known as scheduled breaks for the Law 24.2.6. This is all I want you to remember and note at the present moment. We will come back to it later and its importance. And even in this law, there is a thing about it. Always remember that the duration of intervals as given, it may be lunch may be 60 minutes, lunch may be 60 minutes, tea may be 20 minutes. It will always be adhered to. There will be no variation you can never for any purpose shorten the duration of the lunch and the tea interval, these agreed intervals, and it will always be taken at the agreed length, but and always at the agreed length from the call of time till the call of play again. We know that the game of cricket is not a whistle stop game. So when the clock strikes 12, the referee or the umpire doesn't sound a whistle and everybody goes off. The rules of the game allow, in certain circumstances, for the interval to start a little early, as for fall of a wicket within 3 minutes, or it allows the side to complete the over and then go out for the lunch and the tea interval. So there is no whistle stop. So the point at which the umpire calls time, from there the duration of the lunch interval will start, or the tea interval will start. It will last for 60 minutes when play will be called, and similarly for the tea interval. So therefore it is not a whistle stop game. The duration will be fixed, the time will vary, and we will come, the time for taking it will vary or because of the operation of this law. And we also have a special law, law 4, 5, 6, law 11.4, 11.5, 11.6, which we will be reading in a little while, discussing in a little while, allow the two sides to vary the taking of these intervals, the lunch and the tea intervals, under certain circumstances. Those circumstances are described in those laws, and every umpire should be clear about what he can allow and what he cannot allow. These are all designed to save playing time, and we should know how we should be applying them. The length of an interval between innings shall be 10 minutes from the time time is called till play is called again. It will always be 10 minutes. Here it is reiterated. The agreed time for lunch and tea intervals are subject to change in certain circumstances. Subject to change, which I have already told you, that is 11.4. We will be discussing them, 11.4, 11.5, 11.6, and we have this allowance for, there is an additional provision for allowance for interval between innings. If the innings ends before close of play, when on any day when 10 minutes or less are remaining, say for example we have closing time is 5 o'clock, and at 4:50 or less an innings ends, we don't after allowing for 10 minutes break, we don't have a minute to play. We will call time at that point. And the play will resume the next day. However, we will start at the normal time. This playing time, 10 minutes, would be lost. This time of 10 minutes would be lost, won't be compensated for the next day. Students, I would want students to always remember that this is 10 minutes or less. Why is it 10 minutes or less? That you should have at least a minute more. If it is 11 minutes time remaining, you will allow the 10 minutes and come back to play 1 minute, and complete the over and close the game later. No change, as I said, will be made to the time of start the next day, and these 10 minutes or 8 minutes or 9 minutes of play are lost. It may be 7 minutes before. We'll call time. At close of play, this is how it works. Now, if there is, as the game goes on, there is an interruption. Now, when an interruption takes place, the umpires are supposed to do inspection, and then they will come to a decision at some stage that we are going to resume at such time. And a lot of times, the batting captain might be waiting for such an announcement. And at that time, if he makes an announcement either to declare his innings or forfeit his innings, and more than 10 minutes are there, 10 minutes or more, what I said is wrong. If 10 minutes or more are there, those 10 minutes will go towards this interval, and you will resume on time. If the 10 minutes will be deducted, you will resume, though you don't have to give an additional 10 minutes break between innings. I hope I am making it clear. If 10 minutes or more of the interruption remains, you will allot all those 10 minutes as interval between innings, and play will resume at the normal time. You don't have to give an additional time. If, however, the same applies for an interval. Suppose we are in the lunch interval, and at 1 o'clock the interval gets over. At 12:45, the captain comes and tells you that he is declaring his innings closed. Now you've got 15 minutes left. In these circumstances, you are not supposed to allow an additional 10 minutes break between innings. It is absorbed. You just saved 10 minutes of the game. When you do not have, you have less than 10 minutes. Suppose this is interruption or an interval where at the time of the declaration or the forfeiture by the batting side captain, there are only 9 minutes left. He's cut it a little close, only 5 minutes left. And he delays his decision. He says 5 minutes to 1 he declares. In that case, you don't have 10 minutes. Now, from the time of the declaration, the umpire is supposed to allow 10 minutes and the game will start that much later. 5 minutes later, it will start. So, in effect, with the application of this rule, the rolling time would be more or less taken away, taken out of playing time. The same thing applies for an interruption. You announced that okay, we are going to resume at 1:15 p.m. We are going to resume, and 7 minutes before the resumption, you have informed quite a bit ago, at least half an hour earlier. You had informed that we will be resuming at 1:15, and the captain delays his declaration till just 7 minutes before the announced resumption. You don't have 10 minutes. You have to give 10 minutes. The game will start 3 minutes later. That is how it works. So in that, so you see, this is how the interruption between the break between innings, the time allotted, the 10 minutes, how it is to be accounted for and dealt with in different circumstances is listed here. If an interval, now we have already discussed this, I was reading this, I already told you this applies both to reiterate, interval where 10 minutes and more is available, interval where less than 10 minutes are available. How you deal with it, the same pattern is to be followed in the case of an interruption where 10 minutes or more are left, or less than 10 minutes are left. In both these cases, this is how you are supposed to deal with. Is that alright? Okay. Now coming to law 11.4, which carries the title Changing Agreed Times of Intervals. Like I mentioned to you, there are certain circumstances under which the time, while the duration, actual duration of the interval doesn't undergo a change, can never go undergo a change. The time for taking that particular interval can be changed in certain circumstances. Let us discuss what those circumstances are. The general principle is laid down in law 11.4, which says that if playing time is lost through adverse conditions of ground, weather, light or in exceptional circumstances, that means there is a stoppage in play, there is an interruption in play, and playing time is lost thereby. Or significantly, or the players have occasion to leave the field other than at a scheduled interval. Okay, I'll explain this, or the alternative here. At any time during the match. This applies at any time during the match. So at any time during the match, let me put it in another way. At any time during the match, if playing time is lost, or the players have occasion to leave the field other than at a scheduled interval, the two umpires and two captains may agree to change the time of the lunch interval or of the tea interval, or both. So let it be clear, let me iterate. This law gives the two umpires and the two captains, all four of them together must agree to change, in case they want to change the taking of the lunch time and of the tea time, either of them or both of them. And when can they do that? When playing time is lost, due to, we know the various reasons where playing time is lost. There are stoppages, interruptions in play. We are not talking about intervals, but here we say the players have occasion to leave the field other than at a scheduled interval. Now this is subject. Now at any time during play is given. This is applicable provided the requirements and restrictions in the following are not contravened. And more of that later, but one point, I'll come back to one point here earlier. I'll come back to this later. Now, I told you that the law says stoppages and players have occasion to leave the field other than at a scheduled interval. Now, we have just seen what agreed intervals are. We have seen what agreed intervals are, and we have seen that also noted that for the sole purpose of law 24.2.6, these are considered unscheduled breaks. These are considered scheduled breaks. Others are unscheduled breaks, not for that purpose. Here we have got an undefined term which is other than a scheduled interval. What is a scheduled interval? Is left for us to think about. What is a scheduled interval? A scheduled interval is an interval out of all the agreed intervals. There is one interval which cannot be scheduled. Which one is that? The lunch time has a time for start and a time to end. The drinks time, drinks time, and of course the tea time, they are scheduled. The only interval which cannot be scheduled is the interval between innings. Therefore, the conclusion is, if there is an interval between innings at any time during the match, a right arises, becomes vested in these four dignitaries, the two captains and the two umpires, to make alterations in the timing for the lunch and tea time, or both, either or both. Is it clear? Let me reiterate, let me sum it up. Whenever there is, in one sentence, whenever at any time during the match, whenever there is a stoppage in play due to various reasons, interruption in play, time is lost, or there is an innings break, the two umpires and the two captains can alter the innings. That is the gist of it. Now, having just discussed what 11.4 entitles the two captains and the two umpires to do, you must look at the proviso appearing below the law, which says that this is applicable provided the requirements and restrictions in the following are not contravened. You will easily agree that all these can go along with 11.4. We must specially discuss law 11.5 and 11.6. 11.5 relates to changing the agreed time for the lunch interval, and 11.6 discusses changing the agreed time for the tea interval. These two have to be studied in detail. What these two laws do is, let us take up 11.5 first. What 11.5 does is, the general rule being that at any time during the match, but it makes special provisions for the period of 10 minutes before the scheduled time of the interval. It makes special provisions for that 10-minute time frame. The rest of the match, 11.4 will apply. For those 10 minutes, 11.5 makes special provisions. We have to adhere to it. I'll explain how this works. And then 11.6 applies to makes a special provision for 30 minutes before the scheduled tea time. Say if tea is at 4 o'clock, and from 3:30 onwards, if an interruption and interval takes place, we'll study the provisions in detail. There are special provisions for that. But other than these 30 minutes and other than those 10 minutes, the general rule will continue to apply, that if there is a stoppage or there is a innings break, the two captains and the two umpires can alter the innings. That is how it works. That is the general rule. We will discuss 11.5 and 11.6 in order to elaborate on what I have just told you. Before I start discussing with you the provisions given under law 11.5, I want to clarify that under 11.4, altering an interval means preponing or postponing. It includes both. It can be either or both. Clear? Now let us look at law 11.5, which deals with the lunch interval. Changing agreed time for the lunch interval. Here it provides for 10 minutes. Now say for example 12 o'clock is lunch time. Now this will apply from 11:50 onwards, where 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for the lunch interval. So we are at, if the interval or the thing takes place before those 10 minutes, 11.4 will apply. But at 11:50 and beyond, if there is an innings break or there is a stoppage due to various circumstances, stoppage in play, we know that it is ground, weather and light, lunch will always be taken. No, the right to 11.4 goes away. Lunch will always be taken. In both these cases, if within those 10 minutes, lunch will be taken immediately. At 11:50, if 11:50 the side ends, the innings of that particular side ends, you will call lunch time please and take lunch for 1 hour from that point onwards and resume 10 minutes earlier. This is what you will do. If there is an interruption and you will call time and you will say lunch time please, you will announce lunch immediately and you will resume whenever you have then decide that the game will resume. You look at conditions later on. There is one vital difference I want to point out to you. Look closely at 11.5.2. It says the lunch let me read it out. Stoppage occurs because of adverse conditions of within those 10 minutes or in exceptional circumstances, then the lunch interval shall be taken immediately in all cases. That is done. Like I told you, we'll call this. Regardless of whether or not agreement is reached in circumstances of 11.4. That means this is significant because it means that in case of an innings break, this doesn't apply, but in case of stoppage, they are allowed and to make and come to an agreement under 11.4, but only with regard to the tea interval. They may or may not do it. Only with regard to the entry. So it is open, the law leaves it open. Lunch you will have immediately. Tea, in the case of a stoppage, tea you are free to come to an agreement under 11.4. Now, as always, please remember this is significant. The rights of the two sides are if within 10 minutes the innings ends, there is no 11.4 with respect to this and with respect to tea. But if there is a stoppage, there is no 11.4 available with respect to the lunch interval, but they can come to an agreement for preponing or postponing the tea interval. Yes, this must be understood. Of course, the duration of the break will be as already agreed. Now, what happens if more than 10 minutes remain before the agreed time for any reason? Now, this makes it clear. If more than 10 minutes remain, so more than 10 minutes is outside that 10-minute grey area. So it is at any time during the match. Here it is made more clear. And the players have occasion to leave the field for any reason. If they have occasion to leave the field for any reason, stoppages and what other reasons are there? Innings break. The umpires and captains have the option together to alter it. If they do not agree to alter the lunch and tea interval, naturally the interval will be taken at the agreed time. There is nothing new about it. If you don't agree to do anything, what is written in your list which you agreed to, the timings, we'll have to adhere to them. So nothing new about it at all. So let me reiterate. 11.5 provides a grey area of 10 minutes where different rules will apply. 11.4 will not apply in its entirety. There's a small exception there. And it discusses both an innings break and a stoppage, various reasons stoppage. When it occurs within those 10 minutes, that innings break, 11.4 does not apply with respect to the lunch interval, and it will be taken immediately, and it will also not apply to the tea interval. That right 11.4 is gone for this purpose. But a stoppage is treated slightly differently. The stoppage, in the case of a stoppage, they have no option to alter the lunch interval. You already called lunch, you will have lunch. When you go in, the two captains tell you, sir, can we alter the tea interval? Yes, you may, if you want to agree. Come to us with a proposal, we'll okay it, and then we may have tea at earlier or now. All will depend on how long this interruption lasts. They can come any time during the course of the interruption. Their decision will be influenced by the announced time of, if it is too close to the tea interval, going too close, so they'll say, let us have tea now. You'll agree to that. There is no harm. The law allows it. Alright? And we will now be discussing 11.6. Now coming to 11.6, which says changing the agreed time for the tea interval. Now what 11.6 does is, the general rule 11.4, it alters it, modifies it somewhat. 11.6 provides for a 30-minute grey area, and a further 10 minutes you might call a light grey area, a grey area and a light grey area. The rest of the time is bright sunshine. 11.4 applies. That is how I look at it. The dark grey area, the light grey area, and bright sunshine, where 11.4 applies without hindrance. What this particular law says is, it is talking again about an interruption and an innings, end of innings and interruption in play. It is talking of both these things. Let us go over them one by one. What it says is, when an innings ends at 30 minutes or less remains, from say 4 o'clock is the scheduled time for the tea interval, from 3:30 onwards, if there is an interruption, if there is an innings ends, the interval shall be taken immediately. It will be of the agreed duration of 20 minutes. At 3:30 if it has happened, at 3:50 you will come and resume. Tea we have already taken, you continue to play till end of the day. Fine. But when a stoppage occurs within these 30 minutes, before the agreed time for the interval, now we are talking about that particular time frame, because of adverse cover, either the umpires here, when there is a stoppage, the law provides for them during this period the right to alter the tea interval, and if they do not do it, it will be taken immediately. If they don't agree to do it, it will be taken immediately and you will resume whenever you can. Now in this case, it will be taken immediately. Are we okay with that? Let me read it. A stoppage occurs when 30 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for the tea interval. Either the umpires and captains together may agree to change the tea interval as permitted in 11.4. Therefore 11.4 applies. Or there is another rule here, another law always applies, that the captains may agree to forego the tea interval. It is always their right. They can always do it. Nothing to do with this provision. It is a different provision altogether. 11.9. If they say, look, we don't want, the two captains say we don't want to have tea at all. Alright, we'll sit inside. The tea is called off and there will be no tea time. There will be no official tea time on that particular day. But if they don't come to an agreement, the interval will be taken immediately. Let me explain this by example. We go to your old example that 4 o'clock is tea time, and at 3:31 there is an innings break. Okay, let us first talk. Now let us talk about a stoppage, since we are on the subject. A stoppage takes place at 3:31. Here, right to 11.4 presents itself. Yes, they should be aware. Players should be aware that yes, they can alter the tea. They can agree to take it immediately, or they can agree to postpone. 11.4 gives them the two rights. Suppose they don't do it. Tea will be taken immediately. Fine? Is that clear? The same thing happens with an innings break in this grey area, where there is no option for 11.4. In the case of a stoppage, they have an option for 11.4, which is not preponing, which is postponing, and then also the parallel provision of foregoing will also continue to apply. Now, what the law goes on further to say, that at 3:30, at the beginning of this grey period, an interval between innings or a stoppage are in progress. Both these things are dealt with differently. An innings has ended at 3:25 p.m. So that interval between innings is running into the grey area, into the grey period. There will be no tea called. You will call, you will be doing nothing. The game will progress normally. You will have tea at 4 o'clock. Nothing will be done. You will have tea at 4 o'clock. However, in the case of a stoppage, what it does is, If a stoppage is already in progress when 30 minutes remains, there is a stoppage has taken place, say at 3 o'clock, and it is already in progress, and at 3:30, 3:31, uh, the two captains and the two may agree to alter the time for the tea interval as per 11.4. In fact, they could have done it earlier also. But here we are talking of, if they don't do it earlier, they can do it at 31. That right arose at 11 o'clock also. Alright? But here again it is reiterated, in the case of a stoppage which is drifting into the grey area, you will allow them the option to apply 11.4, and naturally 11.4 says that if they don't agree to alter, the normal times remain. The normal time remains. So we have seen the difference between these provisions, 11.5 and 11.6. 11.5 applies to the lunch interval, modifies 11.4 to some extent, only for those 10 minutes, whereas 11.6 modifies 11.4 for the 30-minute period, and also for 10-minute period, brief 10-minute period beyond, where that interval or the interruption may run into the grey area. This is how it is, and you have to apply these regulations jointly. You should be knowing, and importantly, captain should also be knowing these things. A lot of captains. That is why I always am of the belief that captains, vice captains, coaches must have some idea about how certain of the rules operate. They can now all of these provisions, if you will see, are designed, and some other provisions also are designed to save playing time where we can. Save the 10 minutes, save the whole, in the case of lunch, the whole of the if this provision were not there, you would have stopped for the interruption, then taken the lunch at its original time, and you would have spent more time off the field and less on the field. That is how the idea behind these provisions is that you can, under some circumstances, shift the intervals and save time for the game thereby. Is that all right? Thank you. Once. Now we come to the provisions of law 11.7, which again tells you how the lunch time and the tea time may be delayed in certain circumstances. Now at the outset, let me tell you, if I want to refer to law 12.5.2, which says that if when 3 minutes or less remains for an interval, a wicket falls, that interval will be taken immediately. Right? This rule will not apply in this particular case, where that wicket that falls is the 9th wicket. Remember this. This is that rule is in abeyance for the purpose of this, when it is the 9th wicket, and also for the purposes of this law, the retirement of a batter, which normally is held to be equivalent to the fall of a wicket, doesn't apply. Here we are talking about fall of a wicket. If the batsman retires, that this law doesn't apply. Naturally, you will understand why so. It's easy to understand that. Now, earlier we had this provision which applied only to the tea interval, but now the rules apply both to the tea interval and to the lunch interval, which says that if where 3 minutes or less remains before the interval, the scheduled time of the interval, 3 minutes or less remains, at 11:57 or any time after that, the 9th wicket falls. The 9th wicket falls, and the instructions to umpires are, if it is the 9th wicket which falls there, or it falls at any time in that last over. Now that over has to be completed. Over has to be completed, and it can go up to the last ball of that over. Last ball of that over. In any of those 6 deliveries, the umpire is instructed to announce that tea will be now taken at 30 minutes after the scheduled time. You will make an announcement, 9 wickets are there on the board and less than 3 minutes remain. we are supposed to announce that tea is now postponed to 3:30, which was originally say 3 o'clock. Tea is postponed to 3:30. Fine. And this fall of the ninth wicket may be already down. Ninth wicket may already be down. Say we started in the morning, and 9 wickets were down at lunchtime. Lunch would be postponed. 9 wickets were down at say 11:30. At 12, when we reach 12 o'clock, it is already 9 wickets, still 9 wickets down. Lunch will be postponed for 30 minutes. And we call tea at lunch at 12:30. We resume play. Again at tea time, the same situation remains. It is 9 wickets down. Tea will now be postponed by another 30 minutes. So 9 wickets are already down, or within these 3 minutes, the 9th wicket falls. Either of these circumstances are there, and remember always that the 30 minutes will be from the time of the original 3 to 3:30, not when the 9th wicket falls or later. Either of these things, you have to remember this particular provision, including the final ball of the over in progress at the agreed time for the interval. Play will continue, and the interval will be pushed forward by 30 minutes from the originally agreed time for the interval. Unless of course, if the last wicket falls, there is a break in innings, players have occasion to leave the field, or they leave the field for any other reason like weather. Suppose it rains for a small spell of rain for a few minutes, tea will be announced or lunch will be announced. So they want come back and play for it's just a 5-minute break. No, it's now lunch has been announced. So they want come back and play there. You will have it. The lunch tea will be you will have from whatever time you have called time for that interruption, and carry on. Alright, this is what the law regarding 9 wickets down says, which applies one to the lunch interval, and also to the tea interval. Either 9 wickets are down, or within that grave area of 3 minutes, the 9th wicket falls, or after that during the course of that over till the last ball. Our instructions to umpires are to delay the tea by that much period. Again, this rule aims at saving those 20 minutes, saving the 10 minutes between innings, All right. Now coming to the interval for drinks, there are certain regulations here. The umpire shall determine the times for intervals for drinks, if any, before the toss. We already know that one. And also significantly, on each subsequent day, not later than 10 minutes before play is scheduled. That means they are free to make a fresh agreement for each subsequent day, not later than 10 minutes before the start of play. This is not normally done. It is maybe that this provision exists in order to help players if they are playing in really hot conditions, and their experience on the first day leads them to decide that look, we better have a fresh drinks interval in the first session at least. They are free to do it for each subsequent day. There is no problem there. The law facilitates that. The option to take the drinks interval is available for either side. If the batting side says we don't want the drinks interval and the fielding side says we want it, we shall have it. Both of them have to agree to have the drinks interval. They have to agree to forego the drinks interval. We'll come to foregoing of intervals in a minute. Each interval shall be kept as short as possible, but shall not exceed 5 minutes. Now this is slightly flexible. As short as possible. It could be 4, it could be 3, but never more than 5 minutes. That is the upper limit for a drinks interval. You cannot allow the drinks interval to drag. Drinks interval shall be taken at the end of the over in progress. Always at the end of the over in progress. We have seen in games that the time for drinks is say 11:30, 11 o'clock. 10 to 12 is the session. At 11 o'clock you will not stop in the middle of the over to have drinks. The over in progress has to end, and then you will call drinks time please and wave to the ground staff who are waiting there for you for your signal. Besides that, if within 5 minutes of 11 o'clock a wicket falls or a batsman retires, here a wicket falls, batsman retires, there is that 3-minute break. You will ask for the drinks to be taken early. Normally, end of the over, it can only be taken in the middle of the over if a wicket falls or a batsman retires during the course of the over. This is the only variation that is allowed. Wicket falls or a batter retires at any time, they will be taken immediately. The timings of the drinks interval shall be adhered to. You have decided at 11 o'clock and in the middle, right bang in the middle of the second session and the third session, you fix timings for drinks. Those shall be adhered to. But if there is an innings break, within 30 minutes, if players have to occasion to leave the field or for any reason, an innings end, or players have to leave the field for any reason, within 30 minutes, you are free to alter the drink. You can rearrange the drinks interval in that session. That freedom is allowed, but only for the only where within 30 minutes, if more than 30 minutes are there, you will not alter it. You will still take it at that time. Fine. Now coming to agreement to forego intervals, the captains may agree to forego the tea interval. Remember, this right is given to the two captains to forego the tea interval at any time. We came across this provision when it came to the application of law 11.4, 11.5, 11.6. Foregoing the drink interval under this law is always available to the two captains. They can do it at any time, and it is the two captains. The batsman at the wicket will not be able to, it is not delegated to them, not within their right, whereas the interval for drinks can be foregone by they will deputize for their batters at the wicket will deputize for their captain. If there is a proposal to forego the drinks interval, they don't have to wave out to the captain there and take his permission. They are allowed to deputize, and the umpires will accept their decision there as final. And of course, as regards all of these changes in the intervals and all of these have to be informed to the scorers who are recording the proceedings of the match. So this brings us to the conclusion of Law 11, and I hope that if there is any queries, you are free to please tell me. Thank you. We will be talking about Law 12, start of play and cessation of play in the next session. Bye.